You're listening to The Edge of Reckoning. I'm Sue.
And I'm Neil.
And this is a podcast about navigating life's turning points with awareness, honesty, and heart.
We're two Gen X friends exploring what it means to meet change with open eyes and an open mind.
Thanks for being here. Let's begin.
Welcome back to our podcast. Today we're going to look at some of the ways that we can try to interrupt all the noise that happens inside our head. And one of the things that we've been conversing about is this idea of somatic awareness. What do you know about somatic awareness, Sue?
Awareness is the key word for me. And I think success in all of what we're talking about comes down basically to your own awareness and awareness of your feelings, awareness of, how you react and respond to things, awareness of other people, witnessing, all of that just kind of ties into how you're going to live your life, basically, how aware you are of it. Whenever I hear the word somatic, I think of fight or flight reactions, and I think of that amygdala part of your brain when we were programmed to live in kind of fear, right? And then your somatic responses is how your body responds without you actually choosing to respond that way or not.
So it's like the body's reaction, and it's like a sensation that happens somewhere in the body. It could be fear, pain, joy. It could be any emotion, really, isn't it?
Right. It could be, yeah, exactly. It's something that you don't control, I would say,
Okay.
on
So
purpose.
so it arises in you in the moment.
Right.
And so there's some sort of stimulus, a trigger that happens, and then we feel something,
Exactly. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then after we feel that, what tends to happen is our brain tries to make meaning of it. And all these processes, this is the natural human way we approach the world. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just the way it is.
Right.
We have an emotional reaction, and then our brain makes meaning of it. And the meaning comes from a place of previous experience. It could come from some inherited beliefs that we've talked about before. It could be trauma that was in your culture that you're bringing to it and you have a reaction from it. Or it could be an experience that you've had in the past that you're recalling that has a similar kind of emotional charge to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was reading about the body keeps the score and how that programming and conditioning starts from birth, or even before. So, like you just said, it could
Yeah,
be part of your forensic DNA that gets
yeah,
passed on as they see. That happened a lot with the Ashkenazi Jew culture, and how just going through the Holocaust changed the actual DNA of those people. So it's very interesting science behind all of this. And I just wanted to be clear that people sometimes are inheriting these things, and you're not to be blamed for the way you react. It's just something that's in you. But when you're at that point, like we're talking about right now, that awareness part is key. So what can we do about that?
Have you ever had like a moment in your life where you just felt off? Something in your body was just not right. It might have felt a little depressed or sad or something, but you didn't exactly know why.
Yeah.
The meaning didn't come right away, but the body was telling you something.
Right.
I
Yeah.
had an experience recently where I woke up and I was just feeling really down, and I just kept trying to grab at reasons why. Could this be my reckoning, my hearing loss? But it didn't feel like that. It was something different. And throughout the day, I just kept kind of dropping in reasons. And
Mm,
in that process, I realized that this is what I do all the time is I'll feel something and then my body is trying to make meaning of it.
right.
And what I came to discover later was that my brain was running a script that I wasn't worthy because my family at the time was all going back to work and I wasn't.
Sure.
And so I was feeling like, okay, where's my worth? Because I'm not going back to work right now. And so it triggered this emotion, but I didn't know that throughout the entire day. I just felt really, really off. And so it really brought me to the idea that the body knows first. The body tells you these signals. And what I'm trying to do in my life is to recognize when that sensation appears and give myself just a little bit of space before my mind starts to become lost in all the thoughts and all my programming. We recently talked about the idea of becoming lit, lost in thought, lit. And
Yes.
and basically there's that process of you feel this in your body and then your mind in its search for meaning starts to just loop these ideas and concepts, and the more it loops the more we actually suffer, because a lot of times what we're doing is bringing back old experiences to the present.
Of course, yeah, because it's trying to make us feel better. It wants everything to be the same. The brain tries to keep everything somewhat in balance. So it's
Hmm.
like, oh, like you said, I love that. I had this image of like you're dropping in these scenarios. So like, oh, I felt like this before when blah happened.
Hmm.
So it's just like it's like a Mad Lib, like, fill
Yeah.
in with like bad occurrence,
Exactly. Yeah.
And then
pick
instead,
pick a trauma, throw it in there.
yeah, when you see that gap or when you're aware of your somatic experiencing, what else can you pull from to put in there to
Mm.
try to change that script?
Yeah, the thing that I'm learning right now is it's trying to avoid the tendency to want to label it right away, and that what you should be labeling, if anything, is like, I feel sadness, I feel anger, I feel pain. But what we often do is we say, I'm sad, I am distraught. We attach the sensation to our identity, to how we see ourselves. And once we attach it to identity, then all the stories gathered, it's like you're in a courtroom and the lawyer's looking for evidence. Yeah, my life sucks because of that, and because of that, and because of that, and because of that.
Yeah,
And it puts it into a big pot and it mixes it up into the soup. And now I have a brand new story that I can go tell all my friends about how miserable I am because of all these things. And it's, to me, it's not healthy. And I've done that for so much of my
of
life.
course. Yeah.
So I think the trick here is, how do you figure out a way to just recognize when you feel something that doesn't feel right, when dissonance basically lights you up, when it triggers all those thoughts. You're gonna have those thoughts no matter what. But the more you practice awareness, I think those thoughts begin to change. It's like you're resetting your default reaction.
Right, exactly. And it's practicing it, like doing it over and over. So just that heightened awareness. Okay, I recognize this as something and naming it, like you say. And also another thing is they putting your hand on yourself, it increases that hormone that what's it called? The oxy
Got
the
me?
insert this word right here. Um
Insert word.
it's not Oxycontin, but it's a internal love hormone
Oh,
that
cool.
you get that increases that. It changes the way you feel in the moment when you actually identify something and put your hand on your heart.
Do you think that like enhances like your sense of compassion or empathy for
Exactly.
yourself?
That's what it does. Yeah.
That's amazing. Because
Yeah.
that's probably the key here, is to, instead of judging the emotion as being a bad thing or a good thing, it becomes just this thing that's present. It becomes an object of your awareness that you can hopefully meet with a degree of empathy and compassion. The problem is that this happens like within a microsecond,
Right.
right? It
Right.
happens so fast. It's so, I think you have to begin maybe on another level. There's a thing that I used to think about when I practiced my instruments, was practicing from within when you're without. So if I don't have my horn with me, how can I practice from within? It's a mental exercise. And
Right.
I think meditation in some regards allows you to start to learn how to listen to when your thoughts appear and when
Sure.
your emotions appear. That's just one way. It's not required, but it can help to train that muscle.
I think we're talking about evolving, right? Because if we come from a mind of judging, like
Hmm.
you mentioned, like the lawyer in the courtroom was a great example, because we're judging, is this going to kill me or not? When you would go back to that old time
Hmm.
brain that we have. I mean, we're born with it, but as we evolve, I think we can quiet the judge, or at least understand that the judge is in there. The judge is going to have some power over what we're acknowledging and how we're reacting to things. But it's your choice essentially to give into that or not when you become aware of like, oh, that's my judge right now. It wants me to follow this. But what you're saying is to understand where you're feeling that in your body, where does that show up, and what can you do about it? So how do
It
you
does
think you
doesn't
turn it
serve you.
off? Yeah, it
Doesn't
doesn't
serve
serve
you.
you. So evolving our brains, which I think we can do. I think
Hmm.
when you, the more practice that people put into understanding their reactions, the more evolved you get. And then there's some people that won't ever evolve. They're always going to be stuck. And I'm feeling myself just pulling away from those types of people because we're at a higher level. We're at a higher frequency. Not saying that we're better or not.
No.
It's just what feels better for you, you
You
know?
start to recognize, at least I have, when other people are caught in their mental loops, when they're lit, when they're lost in their thoughts, and you can hear it in their speech, how they talk. Are they talking from a place of identity first, like I am broken, or are they are they reciting a story of their trauma that they've repeated so many times over and over? Really, it seems to me most of what we're talking about here is to reduce the level of suffering we experience in life.
Yeah,
Suffering is going to be there no matter what. We're going to have reactions no matter what. There is ability, and I think the key here is to be able to find choice. And choice can only happen with your ability to be mindful and aware of the moment when you're feeling those emotions in the body. And if you think like for a moment, somebody writes you an email or a text and you have a reaction to it, it's like almost instantaneous, especially if it's going against the plan that you might have had for whatever was going on at that moment. It's there's like a dissonance, and that dissonance kicks in, and it's happened to all of us. And then we want to fire off that reactionary email, or we end up internalizing it. But one day I started to really think like I've just empowered somebody else to alter my emotional well-being.
right.
And I have a choice whether or not I'm going to allow that to happen. And the only way to do is to say, whoa, I feel it. Whoa, there's my reaction. Okay, stop. Let's look at this. What am I really reacting to? Because a lot of times what you think you're reacting to isn't actually it. It might not be the text. It might be about your feeling of not being heard or listened to or being
Sure.
ignored.
Right.
And that's the bigger issue, but you're thinking you're fighting about the text. And I would venture to say we do this a lot. I think it's the nature of our programming, our conditioning. It tells us to see things in a certain way.
Sure.
But imagine if you could just like clean that slate and say, okay, yeah, there's this sensation in my body. It doesn't have to mean anything right now. Let me just live with it for a second. But the instinct, I think, is to get over that and not to feel that and get it over as fast as possible because we don't like discomfort. But the only way to really grow, in my mind, is to slow your brain down and be present and feel the discomfort of having to live in it for just a little bit.
Right.
And maybe that's the question, or the answer to the question that you just asked is like, how do you get to that space, that pause? And it ultimately is just feeling it and living in it just for a little bit longer than you normally would. And it gives you that space that you need to be able to respond instead of react.
Yeah. And it does happen. Like I'm at that point now where I'm noticing it more. I'm still reacting to some things that I don't want to, but I'm
Sure.
noticing when I am,
Yep.
so I'm like, "Oh, okay, I just caught myself there, right? This is what I'm doing." And I
Hmm.
relayed a story to you earlier about like feeling left out about this what happened to me a few days ago. And as I was even retelling the story and having lived through the experience, still still feeling a little like, yeah, I did feel left out and I need to better understand that how even 5 days later, I'm still feeling this left out feeling. So what that allows me to do now is to go back to a time when, what this triggered and heal that in myself a little bit.
Can you find that, or does that take time to figure out?
It takes time. I mean, I think just writing it out has been really
Hmm.
helpful. And, I'll continue to do that. I feel like writing is a really good exercise when you're triggered. To get it out of, the head and put it on paper is a great exercise, and to acknowledge like, oh, I was really feeling left out. When was a time I felt left out as a kid? It kind of goes back. It's like, of
Mm,
course, we all have this feeling of left out. I mean,
sure.
look at social media, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
feeding into it too. It's like, what are all my friends doing right now? Uh, and I do have FOMO. Well, I used to have it a lot more, but addressing it in a way where be kind to yourself. Yeah, you might be feeling left out. What does that bring up for you? Sadness.
Hmm.
Oh, you might be experiencing sadness right now because just bring it up to this level of getting it away from your feeling emotions. If it's still going on like 3 or 4 days later, it's time to kind of go back into that and figure that out for yourself. So then the next time you feel like that, you're like, oh yeah, I had this feeling before. How can I do better?
And again, it doesn't negate the fact that you're having that feeling because it's natural. And we don't want to shame you basically for feeling it,
Right.
but you're learning how to suffer well. So the
Right.
next time you come to a situation like that, it might not last as long. And
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think with the level of emotional intensity that you experience, there's a direct correlation to how long it actually lasts inside of you. If it felt really severe in the moment, it's going to take a little bit longer to understand, perhaps, right?
Right. It's a deeper wound.
Yeah. If I could digress for a second, when you retold the story of feeling left out, you said that you felt the emotions again,
Right.
right?
Not
So,
as intense, but
but they came back.
yeah.
And part of the thing I keep thinking about is it's important to rehash and it's important to share with people, but that's a product of looping in the brain, which is actually deepening that hurt in your neurotransmitters because you're replaying it. But how do you like find clarity without just reprogramming yourself that you're miserable?
I think it's okay in the retelling if you're doing it in a way to help you evolve.
Sure.
You know?
I think about like 12-step programs,
Sure.
AA, those kind of things. And what I think happens in those situations is that the people listening are kind of modeling a sense of non-judgment because there's no commenting that happens, there's no like back and forth
Right.
or
No
the ability to
crosstalk.
try
Right.
to, they're not trying to solve anything. What they're doing is just saying, yeah, that happened to you and seeing it as an object and that it's okay just to look at it, not necessarily have to fix it sometimes. And
Exactly.
just the modeling of the equanimity allows you to say, yes, it is what it is. It's part of life. We just had this experience. It didn't feel good. But do I have to like change the entire, course of my life because of it? Will you like never go out again to see people again in fear that you're going to be left out? Hopefully you're not going to do that, but people
Right.
do that.
People do that. Right. They take it to that one more level of,
Yeah, it's happened to me several times, and the emotion comes back to the surface. So now I no longer do that thing. When we start to think about like bigger emotional waves that happen in our lives, like we go through a reckoning, we lose a partner, we have a diagnosis or something, those emotions stay with us a lot longer, and it gives us more time to really contemplate it in some ways. And one of the things I just read was this idea of like a pendulum. And the pendulum is like you go into that emotion when you're in the middle of a reckoning, and it's like a wave will hit you. And you don't completely get immersed in it, but you every time that wave comes is an opportunity to be able to look at it with a little bit more intention. So it pendulums in, pendulums out. There's also a thing called titration where you're slowly looking at the emotion itself over time, not trying to like solve the whole thing all in one
Right.
moment.
Yeah.
Because some of these reckonings that we do go through are monumental. And it's not something that's happening in an instant. My reaction is actually happening much longer over time. And it's showing up in everything that I'm doing. So for me, I needed to really figure out, why am I holding on to this emotion? Can I pendulum out of it long enough to slow down to see what's actually bothering me?
Right.
Because it wasn't necessarily my hearing loss. It was everything that was attached to it. My
Sure.
identity, my career, my friends, the
Yeah, just
colleagues, all that sort
some
of stuff.
things like that. Yeah.
And that's
Those are
kind of the
big
nature.
things.
But
Yeah.
what's fascinating about all of this study is like, what when you have a huge issue, an emotional challenge in your life, the processes that you go through to solve that are very similar to just receiving a text that annoys you. It's the same thing. It's just understanding how the mind responds. And what I think we're saying today is like, reactions, emotional reactions are just messages. They're messages to your body that something is out of alignment from the way you wish things were to be
Hmm.
going. And that what we have to do is say, okay, first, can I be okay with things not going the way I want them to? We have to figure out a way to have some level of acceptance that life isn't always going to be exactly the way we want it.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
hard for people who want to fix things all the time. Like
yep.
you and I both like to be resourceful and like, oh, we can fix this. This can be
Hmm.
fixed. Instead, we have to take that hat off and just be the put on that allow things to happen hat, you know, and
Hmm.
experience that and be okay with it.
Yeah. And I think if you can get to that point, there's a byproduct that appears that allows you to meet new experiences with a different lens. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is changing our lens of perception in the moment. Because if we practice this and we start to realize, like, wow, this was something that I felt when I was younger, it's coming back now, I don't need to honor this in this moment. The next moment it comes, that process is going to be much quicker.
Right.
And then again, you start to suffer a little less and maybe a little better in some regards.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And
Yeah.
there's different ways to get there, right? We mentioned like putting a hand on your heart, journaling, meditation, living mindfully. When you slow things down, life becomes more simple. I think we've overcomplicated our lives to the point where our brains can't keep up. There was some studies about multitasking, how you can't do everything 100%. You need to allow yourself time and space. And that's the true gift,
Mm.
just when you can slow things down.
Call that the sacred pause.
I
It's
like
that
that.
moment where you can just like chill just for a second. Yeah, I feel this. It's there. What am I going to do about it? And ultimately, the lens I want to wear is, I want a lens of non-judgment. I want equanimity. I want balance.
Yeah.
And so that I'm less likely to flare up my emotions because I'm meeting my experiences with much less of a need to have it be the way I'm envisioning it. I'm just allowing it to be what it's going to be.
Hmm.
And I think that changes everything.
For sure. And have you ever met someone like that?
Oh yeah.
And you
People that
did,
are just so like,
yeah,
just
I know.
calm.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love
It's
to
grace
be
under
like that.
pressure, it's
Yeah.
it's it's that mindset of not allowing the emotions to rule you. Doesn't mean you don't feel them, but
Exactly.
they don't have to govern the way you think. Because ultimately, what I think happens with emotions that are very toxic is that we get into mental looping of trauma. And we start to grab at all those things in the past to ultimately provide meaning. And that's where suffering truly exists. We're clinging to our past misery. And I'm kind of done with that. I'd like to be
Yeah.
done with it,
I know. I'd like to be done with that.
if that's
Yeah.
okay.
I put
But I
that on
do
the shelf and
put it on the shelf. I'm done.
yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, the finding the balance, and just to tiptoe around that a little bit, because our brain does want to find balance, but it's how the brain is currently wired. So your brain will introduce those loops. And so it's time when you're ready. Some people just want to live like that, right?
Mhm.
Or they're okay with the suffering. They don't acknowledge that they are, but they're so set into that they don't know any way out. There's layers and layers and layers and layers so deep that there's no ladder. They can't climb out of this hole that they put themselves in. And that's what it's really sad. But their brain has balanced themselves to be there. So challenging that balance of what is subconscious and conscious, or
Mhm.
however you view
Yeah.
that going on, will get you to another level where you can be more in balance with the judgment and the reaction. So I just want to talk about that balance a little bit.
Yeah, the brain loves predictability. And so if you're miserable a lot of the time and you're always replaying those stories, that's your predictability.
Yeah,
And if
exactly.
somebody said to you, no, none of those things that you're saying are real, you would probably have an emotional reaction and then try to justify it because you judged that statement, which is your default. And then the suffering continues. So to me, everything comes down to judgment. And maybe I'm wrong about that and somebody should push back on it, but our brains judge whether things are good or bad. And if we can get to a point where we could just judge them as they are, just to see things as they are, maybe we'd have a little bit more clarity. Maybe we'd have a little bit more chance to have that sacred pause. And maybe we'd have a little bit more awareness in the end. Who knows?
Who knows? But it's worth a shot. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I feel like. Are you content with how your life is right now? And if you say no, then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. When you said that, all I could think of is you said now. So I'm thinking I'm sitting in this chair right now. Am I content? Yeah, I got a cup of coffee here. I'm talking to my best friend and things are going along great. But the minute I start thinking about my future or some of my past, that's when I change my story,
Yeah,
right? It's
right.
future thing. Because right now, are you doing the best you can in this split second? Because that's the only thing we have control over. And if we start to deal with that moment, and then all the future and the past, they're gone. They're not real.
Right.
But we can change what we can do right in this second.
Now. Yeah.
And to me, that's awareness and that's mindfulness.
Yeah, and staying in that is such a fun place to be. You
Yeah.
know, I was like, oh, I'm right now. Yeah.
I remember the first time I kind of contemplated that. I happened to be in New York City at the time, and I'm a I live out in the sticks, so being in the cities are quite a culture shock for me in many regards. But I remember walking around just like in this sense of awe that I was in the moment in this city, surrounded by all this energy, and I felt like this sense of euphoria because it wasn't about what was next. It was just I'm here, like absorbing all this wonderful culture.
Yeah.
And I strive to get back to those moments. I get back to those moments when I kayak a lot because you're
Mm,
out and you see nature and you start to see the impermanence of everything and you realize, yeah, okay, I get it. I'm part of all of this. I'm not separate from it. And that could be a podcast unto itself is how we tend to detach ourselves from the world. But if I was sitting on the moon, I would see the earth as an organism and I'm just part of that. I'm just a cell inside that big organism. But because I have the ability to separate myself from nature and from the world to see myself as an individual, that sense of self tends to pull me into my own patterns, my own conditioning, and then clouds my ability to be aware of the present moment.
I wonder if both of those examples, like being in the middle of New York City and being in your kayak and being present, is the actual time when your energy and frequency matched exactly with your environment. So you spoke of the energy in New York City. I mean, there's only so much time you can spend there without it being, I
Sure.
think, too
Too much.
much.
Yep.
Yeah, for anybody,
Hmm.
it's way too much. But your frequency, I think, and your energy, you just were one with that moment.
Mm.
And being able to do that, and these are extreme circumstances, right? New York City compared to kayaking on a lake, or just you can't
Hmm.
even get polar opposite. But on the lake, you're in that energy as well. So I think what you're describing is that moment of now is being so synthetically joined with what your surroundings were. Is
Hmm.
that feeling of elation, that feeling of being one with where you are.
Yeah, I see
And
gratitude in those moments.
yeah, it's just like, wow, you're part of the tapestry.
Hmm.
You're just so in it, and that's such a cool feeling. But to apply that to wherever you are, like us doing this podcast together, we're both here, we're both present, we're
Hmm.
feeling this energy, and we turn the mics off and turn it all down. It's like, oh, I want to get back to that because it feels so good to be in the moment. But you and I can apply that. Let's try to do that more in our day to day. Like I get to go to the supermarket. I'm going to try to be in the tapestry of the supermarket
Yeah,
and be
exactly.
present there. Let's feel it. But
Do you ever wonder like what the odds are that your parents met and their parents met and the parents of those parents met? All those variables had to take place for you to be inside that body that you're in. And then once you get in that body, what tends to happen, I think, is we want the world to be this certain way, as opposed to just being grateful that you're actually here to see it in the first place,
right. It makes you very
right?
tiny, right?
Oh my goodness. And it's okay to be part of everything else. That's interbeing, it's interdependence on everything else. And when you start to realize that you truly are connected, then maybe some of those feelings of maybe loneliness or being left out or whatever it might be might dissipate a little bit.
Yeah.
Or it might not. But at least it's like a thought experiment. And a lot of this stuff for me recently, and if you're listening to this, it's like just contemplating another way to see the world, a different perspective that might just open up some new doors that you might not have seen before. Because I think ultimately, since we're little kids, we get programmed that there's a certain path that we're supposed to take. And so we start to develop when we walk that path, and then we get conditioned on that path, and then we start to basically chart our own course based on all that conditioning. But what happens when all the script disappears? Your reckoning pulls it all away from you and says, nope, this is not your reality anymore. I see it as an opportunity. At least that's where I'm landing now after 6 months of going through this. It's just, this is an opportunity to evolve, to maybe wake up a little bit and see things as they are, not as I want them to be.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Come
All
back for
right.
the next podcast. Maybe we'll talk about something even better. You never know.
Sounds good.